Hello friends, welcome to November's update. Hide your kids, hide your wives. That is literally what I named this because as I was going through the astrology for November, yeah, it's gonna be fun. Now it's the major thing that's happening is the eclipse, right? The eclipse window. So as November begins, we've just had Mars go retrograde, right? So we're in kind of, you know, I spent a good portion of the October video talking about Mars retrograde, what it means. But actually for the bulk of October, he was actually still in direct motion. He spins direct or spun direct at the end of October. And so now we're kind of in that slog, right? Okay, so, and then we had the first solar eclipse at the end of October as well. So as we begin the month of November, we're in it, right? We're in the middle of the eclipse window. So the second of two eclipses along the Taurus-Scorpio axis is coming at us. And it's a doozy, man. I knew the eclipse was coming up, but it wasn't until I sat down to write out November's astrology that I realized just how much was actually involved and how nasty it's going to be in my own particular chart. So we'll get to that because that really is the story for November. Not a whole hell of a lot going on otherwise. You know, normal stuff, right? Normal movement, but the eclipse is a doozy, and we've got some nice Jupiter action that will hopefully offset it. So let's talk roster. Where is everybody starting? Where is everybody ending? All right, so starting November 1st, we've got the sun at 8 degrees of Scorpio. He will end the month at 7 degrees of Sagittarius. Mercury starting the month at 3 degrees of Scorpio, back up to full speed, ending the month at 19 degrees of Sagittarius. Venus starting the month at 10 degrees of Scorpio. She will end the month at 17 degrees of Sagittarius. So all three of the Sun, Mercury, Venus traveling in a very tight pack for most, if not pretty much all of November. Venus and Mercury will kind of pull ahead of the sun towards the end of the month, but for the most part they're all traveling together in a pack through Scorpio and into Sag. Mars, our buddy Mars, starting the month at 25 degrees of Gemini, retrograde, having just gone retrograde, ends the month at 19 degrees of Gemini, also retrograde, and again he will be retrograde for a while. He'll be backtracking down about 6 degrees during the course of the month. Jupiter starts the month at 29 degrees of Pisces, retrograde, but he will spin direct eventually this month, and we're going to talk about that. So he will end the month at 28 degrees of Pisces, direct, right? So he's going to tick down 1 degree, spin direct, and then not move off that degree until next month, until December. So not a whole lot of movement, but a shift in direction for Jupiter during November. Saturn is direct, having gone direct towards the end of October. That was a very noticeable shift for me. I'm not sure if that applies to you guys as well, but it starts the month at 18 degrees of Aquarius and ends the month at 19 degrees of Aquarius, so he will start to inch forward and eventually pick up speed. Uranus still retrograde and will be retrograde for a while. 17 degrees of Taurus to start the month, and he ticks down to 16 degrees of Taurus to end the month, where he will continue to kick my ass because my natal Uranus is at 16 degrees of Scorpio directly across the way. So I'm going through that once in a lifetime Uranus opposition. Super fun, and I'm really stoked for an eclipse to light it up. Neptune spends the entire month retrograde at the 22nd degree of Pisces. He will eventually spin direct, but he's going to hang out at 22 degrees of Pisces for a while. He's not spinning direct this month. It's going to happen in a little while, but he's not moving anymore. He's basically gone as far as he's going. Pluto, same thing. Pluto has shifted. He's no longer retrograde. He's in direct motion, but he's at 26 degrees of Capricorn to start the month, and he finishes at 26 degrees of Capricorn as well. Technically moving forward, but at a snail's pace, as Pluto tends to do. All right, so that's, you know, not a whole heck of a lot going on. I mean, most of the movement is actually everything moving into Scorpio. Other than that, you know, it's Mercury, Venus, and Sun, Mercury, Venus are going to switch signs from Scorpio to Sag. Everybody else, all of the majors, stay exactly where they are, right? They're not switching signs at all, and they're actually not moving a whole hell of a lot either. So quite a bit of stillness in the month of November, or, you know, not a whole lot of forward movement or backward movement indicated, to be honest, which, you know, we'll see how that plays out for everybody. Obviously, it's going to be chart specific, but there's a lot of, I guess, kind of stillness in the background. I don't know if it'll feel like that given the magnitude of the eclipse that's coming, but just to give you an idea of when the shifts are moving from Scorpio to Sag, it's all happening within a few days of each other, about 6 days of each other. So on the 16th of November, Venus will move from Scorpio to Sagittarius. The very next day, on the 17th, Mercury will follow suit into Sagittarius, and then the Sun will move from Scorpio to Sagittarius on the 22nd. So we've got that like kind of third week of November where we have some shifting into Sagittarius season. But like I said, everybody else, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, they're all sticking with the signs that they start the month in. So again, not a lot of movement there. And that's actually going to be true for a while now that I think of it, because Mars is going to be in Gemini for a minute. Jupiter will eventually get back to Aries. Saturn's going to be in Aquarius for a long time. Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. Yeah, so not a whole lot of shifting going on except for Sun and personal planets, kind of excluding Mars. So, okay. Geez, which thing should I talk about first? There's really only two major stories for November. Yeah, there's really only two major stories. One is the eclipse, the full moon eclipse in Taurus, and the other is is Jupiter's shift. So I guess let's just take them in sequential order because the eclipse comes first. All right, this is the hide your kids, hide your wives portion of the reading. So we have a full moon eclipse at 16 degrees of Taurus coming up on the 8th of November. Now, eclipses always fall around full moons and new moons, right? Actually met somebody recently that didn't know that. She was like, oh my God, we have an eclipse and a new moon on the same day. And I was like, yeah. So eclipses are always going to be new moons or full moons, right? Earth is just kind of in the way in these particular ones. It's all math, right? It's science. So what's happening is when we have an eclipse, and I probably talked about this last month, but I don't really remember, and I'll just repeat it for anybody who didn't watch October. Eclipses are like full or new moons on crack. That is how I affectionately refer to them. And it is I'm not sure if you've ever seen anybody on crack, but if you haven't, or if you have, you know, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. They're very faded, right? So under normal circumstances, when we have full moons and new moons, they're opportunities for manifestation, right? We set intentions at the new moon. We aim to manifest or to culminate those wishes and desires by the time the moon is full in the same sign 6 months later. Gives us a nice kind of annual cycle to try to be like getting shit done, right? Getting things manifested. Always pays to be paying attention to where these are going down in your chart, right? You don't want to be making a wish that you find, you know, your soulmate when the freaking new moon is going off in your second house, and you should be wishing for money, right? Like being aligned is actually a thing, and that's, you know, there are ways to accomplish it. Astrology very much helps. But when we have eclipses, something very different happens. Now, I switched my stance on this fairly recently, because when I first started advising people on moon manifestation, which is going back a few years now, my opinion was kind of like, don't even bother with the eclipses, right? Set your intentions, every other month, but when eclipses come around, just sit back, right? Don't even bother putting your shit out there, because the thing about eclipses is that they're fated, right? They're destined. They open and close new chapters in our lives, and the events surrounding an eclipse are, I don't want to say predestined. I don't know that I believe that, right? But just kind of for lack of a better word, they're so powerful. The energy around eclipses is just so powerful that, setting intentions most often is not going to override if you've got something being delivered to you during a particular eclipse, right? This would be something that on soul level you planned for yourself before you even got here, right? So setting intentions now while you're already incarnated and thinking that you're going to override your soul's plan is a little bit of a fool's errand. However, that said, I am kind of now of the opinion that, like, okay, sure, go ahead, right? It can't hurt, because hey, who knows, right? Maybe you're so in tune and aligned, and you actually have some sort of remembrance of what the soul plan was, that you actually set an intention that is right in line with exactly what's coming. In which case, go for it, right? Because if, again, it's just alignment, so why the fuck not, right? But don't be surprised, right? If you set an intention during an eclipse and something completely different happens, just understand that it's not necessarily that, it's, you just, whatever, right? There was just something bigger in the grand scheme of your life and your soul's plan and your karmic path that needed to occur. Right, and that's just the way the cookie crumbles, and truly, that's the way the cookie crumbles every month. We set intentions every month. If you're into a moon, into moon manifestation, and it doesn't always work out, right? Sometimes we make wishes for things that that the universe is not ready to give us, or that we're not aligned with, or that just doesn't flow with our highest and greatest good. So, all of those rules kind of still apply, just with the caveat that eclipses, they bring the funk, and they bring it hard. And if you're not aligned with it, then it is what it is. They bring massive amounts of change, massive. And again, this is not going to be the same for everybody, right? Sometimes eclipses go off in places in our chart that there really isn't much going on, right? We don't have any planets there. There's no angles there. It's kind of just free floating. In which case, it may feel like just any other new moon or full moon, right? Sometimes, like with this upcoming one, it is a direct motherfucking hit to a major planet, and you're literally scared 2 weeks in advance because you're like, holy shit, what is this going to bring? Again, different experiences for everybody. Now, and I'm pretty sure I went through this last month, but I'll go through it again. The Taurus-Scorpio axis, where all of the eclipses are going down currently, and for the rest of the year and into next year, is the axis of survival, right? So the south node is in Scorpio, the north node is in Taurus. The south node represents our karmic past, the north node represents our karmic future. So the direction that we're supposed to be heading karmically, energetically, right, with our intentions and whatnot, as a collective and on a personal level, is away from Scorpio and towards Taurus. What does that look like? Well, what it looks like is moving away from shadowy Scorpio energy and towards more enlightened Taurus energy. Shadowy Scorpio is deep, dark, toxic attachment, right? It's attachment to things that no longer serve us. It's codependence. It's kind of wallowing in the misery and the sludge just because, inability to let go of things because you're just too scared to let go of it, right? Sticking with the devil, even though it's bad for you. And this can apply across any sector of your chart, right? This can be in relationships, it can be with a job, it can be your relationship to money, it can be a relationship with a sibling, a friend, right? There is some sort of emotional connection between you and the thing or the things that we're being called upon to release, but release it you should, because the indication with the South Node in Scorpio is that it no longer serves your highest and greatest, and it is in fact pulling you back karmically, right? Keeping you stuck energetically. Towards Taurus, right, where we're heading. Taurus is fixed earth, right? Taurus is the sign of survival here on the material plane. Enlightened Taurus is all about self-sufficiency, right? Figuring out what it is that you need here on the material plane to survive and providing it for yourself. And hopefully, doing such a good job at generating those resources that you have abundance and ability to share with others, right? So that you can kind of, move back towards the Scorpio side, and share, right? It's not like we don't want to share with others. It's just that we want to get away from the toxic Scorpio stuff. The stuff that we shouldn't be sharing anymore, the stuff that people are sharing with us that we shouldn't be taking anymore, right? Because we've outgrown it or it's no good for us. Taurus learns how to provide for self, and to provide for self always, so that, God forbid, something goes wrong on the Scorpio side of the axis and we're forced to excise and cut people, places, and things out of our lives, we still have our own 2 feet to stand on, right? We're not going to starve to death because we had to let go of a toxic relationship. And unfortunately, there are people out there that have those concerns, right? They stick in relationships out of financial concerns and things like that, right? The idea here with these eclipses is that we are moving towards self-sufficiency and towards Taurus. So that's all very general. Now let's get into the specifics of this eclipse, because we've just at the end of November had our new moon in Scorpio eclipse. That one went off at 2 degrees of Scorpio. It was conjunct Venus. It was relatively benign and pleasant. This one, this full moon eclipse coming up on the 8th of November is not. It is, well, yeah, I mean, there's just a lot, right? It's a lot. So let's go through the mundane astrology of it. So on the 8th of November, we have the sun and the moon moving into position across from each other at 16 degrees of Scorpio and Taurus respectively. So the sun on the 16 degrees Scorpio side, moon 16 degrees of Taurus. That's the full moon part. Earth will be in the middle, which causes it to be an eclipse, but that's not it, right? We've got a whole bunch of other bullshit going off that day as well. That day on the 8th, we also have the Sun-Mercury conjunction, so the Cazimi, right? So Mercury, having recently come off of a retrograde, which took him back through Libra and into Virgo, he spun direct in early October, started picking up speed, is now moving direct, gets into Scorpio, catches up to the sun, and actually meets the sun on that day. So not only is the sun opposing moon for this particular eclipse, but Mercury also opposing the moon on the same day, and the sun conjoining. So that's enough to set us up for, you know, a little bit of extra. Not that we need it, because an eclipse already is extra, but you know, so that's number one, right? Number one extra. Number two extra, which is arguably even more of a big deal, is that both the sun and Mercury on the Scorpio side at 16 degrees will be opposing Uranus in Taurus at 16 degrees. So the moon, right? So this is what we got. We have two planets on each side, right? We've got Sun Mercury on the Scorpio side at 16 degrees. We have Moon Uranus at 16 degrees Taurus opposing. Now, this is like a direct motherfucking hit on both sides, right? So like, even if Mercury and Uranus were kind of like a degree or two away on either side from the sun and the moon, that would be enough. But this bad boy is lining up exactly, right? So it's like teams, right? We have Moon Uranus on one side, Sun Mercury on the other. Interestingly enough, we've also, so Mercury and Uranus as the kind of the outside players getting in on this eclipse, both the embodiments of the mind, right? So like the Mercury represents the lower mind, Uranus represents the higher mind. So there's something very cerebral and mental about this particular eclipse, even though it's going down in on the water earth, territory, right? On the axis of survival. You know, it's right. All right. So, and then I'm not even done, right? There's more. The whole fucking shebang is getting squared by Saturn. So Saturn in Aquarius at 18 degrees. He's a couple degrees off, but that's still, we're going to call that, right? That's good enough for government work, is squaring. So this eclipse is actually forming a bugger of a fucking T-square in the fixed signs, with the only sign not affected being Leo of the fixed signs. It's gross. It's gross, right? This is it's gross. So much to unpack here, right? It's the Saturn-Uranus square, series of squares that has been going on since last year. We had 3 direct hits of it last year. This year, it did not exact, but it got really close to doing so. And it's starting to separate now that Uranus started moving retrograde. Saturn is moving forward. Saturn is going to pull ahead. And so, like I said, it never perfected in 2022. It did perfect 3 times in 2021. But it got really, really damn close. And so that particular square being lit the fuck up by this eclipse, separating, but still, and again, good enough. You know, that square has very much been about figuring out, you know, what stays, what goes, right? What are we going to continue to do as a collective in the name of progress? And where have we thrown the baby out with the bathwater in the name of progress, right? So many different examples of this going on in current events, you know, on the global scale, certainly on the national scale. It's utterly ridiculous to see the way that it's all playing out. You know, the suggestion with an eclipse here, a full moon eclipse, is that there's some major culmination that's going to come at us, probably on a collective level. So we'll see how that goes. The Uranus-Mercury opposition, again, that lower mind versus higher mind, right? Pit against each other. What, you know, these kind of universal principles of, like, again, progress, right? This is, the Uranian stuff is really prominent right now, and will be with this eclipse. And Uranus is considered to be in his fall in Taurus, meaning he's as weak as he can possibly be as he's over there, right? Because Uranus is the great awakener. He is the agent of change and rebellion and revolution if need be, right? Uranus happens upon a situation, and if he sees things stagnating and not operating to their best ability, he fucks shit up, right? That's his job. Like, he comes in and he literally just like throws lightning bolts at the situation, and he's like, nope, come on, right? It's like, clear the defibrillator, right? That's Uranian energy in a nutshell. That image right there of like, we're just, no, you're stagnating. Like, we're just going to bolt you with as much electricity as we can and start you over and reset, right? Reset. So, as he's moving through Taurus, his trek through Taurus has not been an easy one, because Taurus is like the sign that so fiercely resists change. Like, voted most likely to resist change in the whole zodiac all the time, right? That's Taurus. So now, Scorpio doesn't love change either, but Scorpio won't shy away from it because Scorpio ain't scared, right? So Scorpio is like, we'll hang on. But at some point, Scorpio gets to a point where it's like, oh no, fuck this. Like, I'm not hanging on to this anymore. So Scorpio, and Scorpio also knows that it's very good at kind of burning through and regenerating, eliminating, and kind of just doing that whole transmutation thing. Taurus doesn't. Taurus is like, no, we're just going to keep hanging on. Like, we're going to watch it die. We're going to nurture it while it's, disintegrating. I mean, it's just, Taurus really, really hangs on. But Uranus says no, right? So we're just, we're going to have to see. Really, really tough for me to say how this is going to show up. First and foremost, because obviously it's going to be chart specific. Secondly, because it's Uranus, right? So that's like his MO is shock value and surprise. Very, very rarely the case that I can predict with any type of accuracy how that motherfucker is going to show up, because, you won't even see it coming. So very little chance that I'll be able to see it coming for you. But just do be careful. If you've got planets or points anywhere around 16 degrees of the fixed signs, you are in line for this, right? As I mentioned earlier, my natal Uranus is at 16 degrees of Scorpio, so it is going to be exactly in line with the sun and Mercury side of the equation, opposing, transiting Uranus, and the moon on the other side. Oh my God. In my 3rd, 9th house, so big fucking lesson coming my way. I'll report back if I'm still alive to talk about it. But yeah, and then that square from Saturn coming from Aquarius just makes it really ugly. So yeah, be on the lookout. That's all going down from the 8th to the 9th. Sun-Mercury conjunction, and the opposition, and the eclipse, like the actual full moon, go down on the 8th. Technically, the Sun-Uranus opposition doesn't go down until very early morning on the 9th. So we've got a kind of just a couple days there where it's going to be kind of ugly. And I'm sorry, I'm looking also that Venus will square Saturn on the 7th, the day before. So Venus won't be too terribly far away either from this whole mess. She's not right up in there, but she'll only be a few degrees away. Joining the fucking party. So, all right. Okay, so that's the eclipse. It's gross, and we're all just going to have to deal with it. And then we've got, all right, so we have some decidedly lighter news, though, on the other side of the lunar cycle, which is on the 23rd of November, we have the new moon at 1 degree of Sagittarius. Now, on that day also, Jupiter is stationing direct at 28 degrees of Pisces. This is a significant day. And the reason that, so it's a new moon, right? New moon in Sagittarius, which, again, will mean something to everybody, and it's at 1 degree, so it's early on in the sign. Sun moves into Sagittarius on the 22nd, and then the very next day we have the new moon, sun and moon meet up. But the ruler of Sagittarius, Jupiter, is stationing direct on the same day that we have a new moon in Sag. So that's nice, right? That's beautiful. We like to see stuff like that where there's resonance. If there's more than one thing going on any given day, a lot of times we just have aspects going off and they're disjointed and there's no connection. We like to look for things like this that's, it's not technically a mutual reception situation, but there's resonance. Like I said, right, there's a new moon in Sagittarius, and the Sagittarian ruler, who's also very strong in Pisces, right, because he's a co-ruler over there, stations direct. It means that there is an abundance of an abundance of abundance energy in the air that day, again on the 23rd. So let's recap Jupiter's retrograde journey. So Jupiter will, like I said, he'll station direct on the 23rd of November at 28 degrees of Pisces. He originally went retrograde on the 28th of July, so it's been some months, at 8 degrees of Aries. He made it into Aries, got all the way to the 8th degree, and then decided to backtrack and head back about 10 degrees to 28 degrees of Pisces. But he's done, right? He's pretty much done, or he will be done by the end of this month. Jupiter retrograde, wherever this has been going down in your chart, is about evaluating growth and expansion, right? So Jupiter, our greater benefic, our planet of luck and abundance, expansion, onward and upward, says Jupiter, right? That's his message. He's you know, he wants us living our best life. Most of the planets do, except Saturn and Mars. But the rest of them, for the most part, are here to kind of make sure that we're expanding in a good way. When Jupiter backs up, when he decides that he's going to go retrograde, he asks us to put the pause button on our expansion and to evaluate the expansion and the growth that we've experienced since the last time that he went retrograde. So in some way, he acts a little bit like Saturn when he's retrograde, but he's less of a dick, right? Saturn's just a jerk. Saturn wants us to, basically just be restricting ourselves all the time. Jupiter doesn't want that. It's not that he wants us to restrict ourselves. It's more that he wants our growth to be sustainable. And so when he's retrograde, he's asking us to kind of look and see, like, okay, well, where have I made a lot of progress? Is this progress sustainable? Have I grown in areas that I can't sustain or maintain? Maybe I wanted something and it turns out that it wasn't really good for me at all, right? So there's a pullback that's kind of demanded, so that when Jupiter stations and moves direct again, we can expand in a more measured and calculated and sustainable way, right? Because we've gotten rid of the excess. Jupiter tends to bring, while he's bringing luck and expansion, he does tend to bring a fair amount of excess and things that we don't need. And so no real need to hang on to that stuff, because when Jupiter's around, there's plenty of abundance to be had. So, again, this is all coming up for us on the 23rd. When Jupiter spins direct, he will eventually start to move forward. By the end of the month, he ticks off a degree. In December, he will get back into Aries. And then it will be kind of on like Donkey Kong, because the, Jupiter in Aries transit was very short-lived, and so he wasn't done with the whole Pisces area of the chart. So pay attention to where that cusp line is, right? The Pisces to Aries cusp. Where does that fall in your chart? For me, it falls in my 7th house. So if you're secretly in love with me, seriously, it's time to fucking find me already. But no, joking, kind of. It's, because that is the end of a cycle. Like, it's literally the end of the zodiac and then the beginning of the zodiac again. So having a planet, especially one as, kind of famous as Jupiter, is, crossing over that line and 3 times, right? Because he went over it, he came back over it, and then he's going to go over it again, means that there's a significant cycle that's beginning, and it was really important that we get it right this time. Paying attention to what house that falls in, what area of life does that fall in for you, and knowing that's a fair, after a pullback, right, after an experience of some retraction and, possibly some kind of sadness about having to let go of some things, that we are moving into a cycle of abundance, another cycle of abundance with Jupiter. And it's going to be off to the races once he gets back into Aries next month. All right, so let me just double check. Oh yeah, and again, Sagittarius new moon on that day, so that'll be a good day for manifestation, or setting intentions anyway, in the Sagittarius area of the chart. Highly likely that you will be able to make some dreams come true under that energy if you are properly aligned with whatever's going on around the 1st degree of Sagittarius in your chart. All right, that's really it, guys. It's other than that, we've got things moving and shaking, lots of aspects. Lots of kind of, let's see here, what do we have? Trines to Neptune, sextiles to Pluto, as everything moves through Scorpio and eventually into Sagittarius. Mars, even though he just went retrograde, is actually really quiet for most of the month. He doesn't start acting up until towards the 19th. He'll square Neptune. And then he is quiet again till the end of the month. 28th, he trines Saturn, and then 29th, he opposes Mercury. But other than that, he's not really doing much, but he is, he's retrograde now. So just, keep that in mind if it feels like it's hard to get things done, if the wind is out of your sails a little bit. I personally love Mars retrograde because I was born under a Mars retrograde, so haha, you guys get to experience the energy that I live with all the time. Super fun being passive aggressive, especially in Gemini. So, okay, that's all I got for you folks. Always a pleasure. See you soon.